We need to figure out exactly where we need to notch the headset out for the hose. So we went ahead and put our 2 bolts in the perch on the side here, the 2 screws, and then we just put the banjo bolt in and snugged it up so that we can get a natural look of where exactly this hose is going to sit. And at that point, then you can just take a scribe and you can just scribe your line on each side. And then from there, you can either start going after it, or if you're like me and you're really anal about this kind of stuff, I get out a template, and what I do, with the circle template here is then I just pick what size it is, which for this one, it's a 1332, so it's this one right here. And then I just line it up, line the lines on this up with there, and then I just fill that in so I know exactly how much I'm going to remove. And then what we'll do after this is we'll remove this little bit, and then we'll actually put the headset top on and then use our template to fill that part in, notch the headset top at that point. And now to actually notch it, I'm going to use my air-powered die grinder, and then you can get this special bit for these that is made for aluminum, and it has enough space in there so that it doesn't cake it out like it would a normal burr. But you could use a Dremel or a drill with a sanding bit. I mean, whatever you have, to do this kind of stuff is really up to you. But this is what I use. So. All right, we had a slight change of plans with this, because what I want is I wanted this to be sandwiched in between these two so it looks a little bit more natural. If you were to put it all the way on one side or the other, you'd have to slot it so far that it's not being pinched between the two, and you'll actually have some area between the hose exposed. So what I had to do is I had to move my entire slot down on the bottom part, and to do that I just scrolled the line across this right here, and then I got my template out again, and then I just matched it up with my template, 13/30 seconds, and trace it in. As you can see, it's a long notch now, but once it's closed like that, it's not. It's a normal size hole. And now we're going to notch this part out here, and then that'll give us a nice perfectly round clamping surface around that hose with no air space exposed. You can see now I have a nice tight clamping joint there, so there's no air exposed in there, so it looks clean, like factory would do, something like that. So now that the headset's notched out, we can actually put our banjo bolt together, and you can see that the banjo bolt, you got your 2 crush washers, one on each side of the fitting right there, and then the hose routing is going to go through the notch, and then right down the right side of the headset right there in the front. And then from there we'll actually travel behind the leg shield clamp here, and then straight down the right side and out the bottom. And now moving on to Matt's wheel, we went ahead and bolted that up. I don't really have to explain how you bolt a wheel on, but I'll just quickly highlight. These are torqued to 15 pounds each, and then you just want to tighten them up in a cross pattern. As you can see, everything's fitted up there nice, and it's ready to go on the front fork. As I've noted with Matt's earlier when we were doing the disassembly, he has the clip-on type fork buffer holders. So there's going to be a little bit of a difference here in how this goes. If you don't have those, you would just take your fitted washer. These fit right inside the fork link like that, and they're actually what hold your wheel in the fork link, keep it from falling out. And then you just put your nylock cap nut there, and with these they actually link like this on the fork like this, and it's kind of a misnomer because you think it actually clips onto the fork link, but it doesn't. It clips onto the washer. So to fit these, you actually have to start, you know, this here, and then kind of slide the washer in behind it, and then you can put your nylock here, and when we go ahead and lift it up, you know, we'll be able to push that in and lock it in that way. And these are kind of difficult to get into place, so this might be kind of hard for me to visualize for you. But essentially, since this is a drum brake, you know, we have to line the Speedo drive up, the new Speedo drive, with the drum brake tab here that holds the brake plate in place. And then we just have to lift the whole contraption up into the fork link. And once you're done, you know, getting that wrestled into place, you can go ahead and torque that. These are getting torqued to 40 pounds. I'm just gonna go ahead and do 20 pounds on each side and then finish it at 40 each side. Just to get a nice even squeeze on it. Same order as before with the banjo bolt. You know, you got the crush washer, and then you put your fitting, and then your crush washer, and put it together. So, and then as you can see, you want this part to kind of angle out a little bit. All right, I figured out where I wanted my cable ties to be. So I'll look here. You can see right above that shock mount right there, there's a cable tie right there. And that's, you can see that is actually just underneath the cable guide on the fork leg there. And then the other one, if you come up here, is going to be where you normally put one on the frame anyways, and that's just below the neck, and that's just to hold the hose in place. And the reason that you want them like that is so that when you turn the wheel, I'll try to get a good picture of it. You can see the hose is not touching the wheel, and if you look underneath, the hose is not touching the wheel when you turn. It's also not touching the fender. Now we are going to install the switch. And as you can see, I went ahead and took the liberty of resheathing Matt's original switch harness because holy bananas, do the cracked and brittle and hard as shit original harnesses drive me bananas. If they're in good shape, I use them and I reuse them. But if they start getting all cracked up and brittle, they just start driving me nuts. And I have to just recover them. And it's kind of a pain in the butt, but it's totally worth it. And the next time somebody ever has to stick their head in this headset, they won't think, oh man, what a hack, or what a piece of shit, or anything like that. They'll just say, oh, that's a really nice harness. Somebody obviously cared. And now we actually have to route this. And this goes underneath the cable here. And then you clamp it, you know, right on that, right where the seam is. And that'll give you just enough there for the front. And then this is actually going to have to go straight down next to the brake line here. And just tighten up the screws and done. Now I already have the front brake switch wired up, and I was gonna try to explain how to do that, but it was gonna take me like way too long to do it, include that, so I'm not gonna include that bit into this video. But moving on, now we can go ahead and put the throttle tube on. And don't forget, you got your spring washer here, and then you got your shim washer that go on the throttle tube. And the spring washer goes first. That sits against the switch housing. And then for the shim washer, I always put a little bit of a grease on it because it is a moving part, and you know, it has friction between it and the throttle tube itself. So I put a little bit of grease on it and then set that on there. Not too much, you know, I don't want it all over the place. And then we'll go ahead and grease our inner throttle tube up just a little bit, just to make that a little bit better. And then at that point, we can go ahead and put our end in, the plastic end bushing. Push that in like that. And then we can go ahead and start fitting our throttle tube. You can see that just goes in like that. And then I'm going to put a little bit of a grease here right where that bushing runs, where the olive runs, just to make sure that I get good action there of his throttle. And since I went and replaced all the cable housings, I'm going to have to put some pressure behind this just to get it into place. Just so we can get a good squish on those for now. I'm going to clean some of that grease off. And then we have our throttle shim right here. And again, I just put a little bit of grease on that because that runs against the olive. And again, anything with friction in the headset, I always put a little bit of grease on there. And you can see I'm just stealing from my spots that I have to clean off here in a second. Put that on. And then go ahead and line that up there and just push it through. Just like that. And then we can go ahead and fit our pinch bolt. I always fit these with a screwdriver instead of a socket, even though they have a socket head on them. Just like that. You can see there's no slop here going in and out, which is really important for action. If you got any slop there, you want to go ahead and add some shims here if you need to. Yeah, anytime there's any slop in the headset, that just drives me absolutely bananas. So definitely want to try to curtail that. And now the next thing we'll actually do is we're just going to go ahead and fit the headset top. Now fitting the headset top isn't really going to be any different than, the opposite of taking it off. So not really much to talk about here. And now I got his headlight clipped into place and the ground strap hooked up. And we can go ahead and push this in and we'll start putting our trim screws on. And if you haven't already, go ahead and tighten down this banjo bolt. It's a 12mm banjo bolt at the top. And then we'll tighten the bottom one here when we hook up the Speedo cable. And all we got left down here now is to just get our Speedo cable hooked up, and then we need to go back and wipe down the rotor surface with some brake cleaner and a paper towel just to make sure that any greasy fingerprints or anything like that are not on there when we start using it. And now, as far as the hook up the Speedo cable, it's pretty simple. You just take this and feel around till it lines up and, push that in. Make sure you got that little collet there, and that holds it. That's what actually clamps it down. And then go ahead and tighten that, finger tight, and then grab your plier and just give it a little tweak. And that's it. And here, I just sprayed some brake cleaner on a shop towel, and I'm gonna go ahead and clean the rotor off. And get all the grease and anything that's on it off of there, so it works the way it's supposed to, and that's really all there is to that. Now we just have to put the horn cast on, and since everything on Matt's is all hard as a rock, and you can see that gasket is stuck there, I don't want to upset that in any way, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave that like that, and then we're just going to slide that into place as it is. So those little flappers are going to go underneath the horn and kind of cover everything up. And then once I'm done with this, I'll just put the screws in that we took out in the last episode, and it'll be ready to go. All right, and now finish it off with Matt's shitty ass horncast badge, just like that. And that's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one where we actually bleed the brakes.